Can the Denver Nuggets win an NBA championship within the next 5 seasons? Let's get into this. Quickly before we get the video started, if you guys enjoyed this video and want to see more NBA content just like this one, hit that subscribe button and that post notification bell. Anyways, back to the video. For some time now, the Denver Nuggets have been building something special. When you look at the roster, of course they have Nikola Jokic, they have Jamal Murray as well, Michael Porter Jr., who they just signed to a big contract, Bull if he ever turns out to be something going forward. They have Aaron Gordon, who's a nice younger player. PJ Dozier, I think, is a pretty decent player. They have some pretty nice players on their team, and overall they're a very well-rounded team at this point. Now also, this team is pretty well coached under head coach Mike Malone, and over the past few seasons during the regular season, they've kind of had a similar path to the Utah Jazz. They've been pretty good in the regular season, being a top 3 seed, maybe a top 4 seed, basically over the past few seasons, but once it came to the playoffs, they didn't do exactly what they would have liked to do. There were certainly some playoff series where maybe they got farther than a lot of people thought they were able to, but overall for their standpoint, they always want to get to, at the very least, out of the Western Conference, and of course the eventual goal is to win an NBA championship. But of course the first thing before you can win a championship is actually make it to the NBA Finals and get out of the Western Conference, which is obviously a very difficult thing to do. Now when you look at the roster that the Denver Nuggets have that I listed out before in the video, you notice that most of the players on the roster are younger players, especially the main guys. They have some veterans sprinkled in, which is exactly what you want to do, but the main guys that you have on your team and the main stars should be younger players, especially in this new day and age. But the good thing about having younger players as your star players is basically each and every season you would expect them to get better each year, and basically that's what they've been doing, especially when you talk about a guy like Jokic, who basically came from nothing. He came into the NBA with basically no expectations, and he's obviously built his way all the way up to where he is now. When you look at another guy like Jamal Murray, he's also been building and got better each and every season. Basically all the young guys on their team have gotten better each and every season, and you would expect that trend to continue for them going forward. In a few years from now, I would expect Jokic to be a lot better then than he is now. The same thing for Jamal Murray, and already these guys are at the very least all-star players. Jokic clearly a superstar, maybe the best center in the NBA, and Jamal Murray I would say is on that borderline of being an all-star and probably will be pretty soon. So for this Denver Nuggets team, you don't necessarily have to make extreme changes to actually win an NBA championship, although it probably would help, but just over time and experience in the NBA, experience in the playoffs, you would think all these main guys would get better and just make it a lot easier on the organization going forward. But besides just the talent on this team, because definitely there is a ton of talent on this Nuggets roster, the way they actually play together is beautiful to watch. You see off-ball screens, cuts to the basket, just great ball movement in general, and you always see Jokic taking the ball up the court, which is crazy to think that he's a center and he's a better passer than most point guards in the NBA. He takes the ball up the court, always finds a wide open guy either in the corner for wide open 3, someone cutting to the basket for an easy dunk or layup, maybe he drives a little bit and kicks out to one of his wide open shooters. He's always going to find that wide open guy, or maybe he can post up, throw it behind his head. There's some crazy passes that we see on House of Highlights all the time from Jokic. But the biggest person that I think there's 2 people, but the biggest person that I think benefits from Jokic the most is Jamal Murray. Now Jamal Murray would be the typical point guard on this roster, but when you look at actually how he plays, he's more of a combo guard and more of a scoring guard rather than just a true pure point guard. So if Jamal Murray was a pure point guard on this team and he had the ball in his hands all the time and had to facilitate and play make, I think he can do an okay job, but he's definitely not up to standards in terms of his passing and playmaking ability to a lot of different other NBA point guards at his position. So I think the Nuggets, of course, if Jokic wasn't on the team, they would be a lot less efficient, but specifically having the ball in Jamal Murray's hands and having him play make all the time, I just don't think they would be as good. Well, obviously I know they wouldn't be as good as if Jokic was playmaking for them. But also another guy that truly benefits from Jokic, besides everybody on their team just getting easier shots, is a guy like Aaron Gordon. For a long time, Aaron Gordon was playing in Orlando, obviously, and he never truly played with a player that's as good as Nikola Jokic. We see this time and time again ever since Aaron Gordon actually got traded to the Denver Nuggets, but Aaron Gordon would quickly make a backdoor cut, Jokic would find him basically every time, and Aaron Gordon gets a wide open dunk or layup. This is just something that was completely foreign to him. He never had a player on his team that garnered so much attention that they wouldn't pay as much attention to Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon was the best player on their team by far. Maybe you can say Vucevic at times, but basically the defense was always focused on Aaron Aaron. So the fact that now with Denver, he's a third option at best, I think it just helps him out so much in terms of just going backdoor and Jokic finding him in general. Jokic finding him for a wide open three in the corner. So of course, Jokic benefits everybody on the roster, but specifically, I think he mostly benefits Jamal Murray number 1 and Aaron Gordon number 2. But now let's get to the question of the video, which is, could this Nuggets team actually win an NBA championship within the next 5 seasons? Now, of course, they have Jokic. He's fine. He's amazing. He's only going to get better going forward. So they have a great start with Jokic. But when you look at a guy like Jamal Murray, I think he's fantastic. I think he's going to continuously get better as time goes on. He's obviously still very young. There's some games where he flashes his amazing talent, where he completely goes off, or maybe for a little bit of a stretch, maybe 20 games, maybe in the playoffs as we've seen in the bubble, where he just can't miss a three-point shot. He can't miss in general. He's super efficient. He's just scoring at will. Nobody can guard him. He has his times and he shows flashes where he's able to do that, but the biggest issue with Jamal Murray is his inconsistency. There'll be some games where he completely goes off, but there's some other games and huge games as well where he completely dwindle and just not be the same player whatsoever. Maybe he lost his confidence, or maybe he's just off that day, whatever it is. It just can't happen if you want to be at the very least an all-star level talent, or maybe even better than that going forward. You look at a guy like Jokic, you look at the stars around the NBA. Of course, there's some games, obviously, where they're off their game, but for the most part, all the superstars are very consistent. That's what made them be able to get to that point. There's a ton of players in the NBA that are super talented and maybe have star talent in the league, but they're very inconsistent and they're never able to achieve that level of superstardom. But if Jamal Murray wants to get to that point one day, he's going to have to fix his inconsistency issues. And if he does that, I think the Nuggets going forward, specifically in the playoffs, will be much better off. There's been countless times over the past few years where Jamal Murray, of course on the bubble, he was fantastic, but besides the bubble, there's been a few times in the playoffs or in big games where Jamal Murray just completely was not the same player in that huge game that the Nuggets had to win, and it affected them going into the playoffs or in the playoffs, and they lost that game, and maybe due to that loss, then they lost the whole playoff series. So if Jamal could fix those inconsistency issues, I think this Nuggets team would be a lot closer to winning an NBA championship than obviously if he wasn't. But now let's say, for the sake of the video, that Jamal does fix his inconsistency issues and he does get to, at the very least, that all-star level talent. Would this Nuggets team be able to win a championship within the next 5 years? I think it'd definitely be a big help if Jamal does become consistent, of course, and does live up to those expectations of potentially being at the very least an all-star going forward, maybe even a little bit better than that. I think he's that talented. But even besides that, when you look around the NBA, you look at the Lakers and you look at the Nets, you look at some other teams around the NBA, basically all these teams have at the very least 3 stars on their team. And maybe if all 3 of your guys in Nikola, Jokic, Michael Porter Jr., and Jamal Murray all get a lot better from where they are currently, a little less Jokic and more of the other 2 guys, if they get a lot better, then maybe you could form that big 3. And maybe if Aaron Gordon also improves to that borderline all-star level going forward, then maybe you can use what you have in-house and then eventually compete for an NBA championship and maybe even win one within the next 5 years. I'm not saying that can't happen, that definitely could, but at this point currently, it seems to me that this team probably should look in free agency or maybe via trade to bring in that 3rd superstar. It appears to me, and obviously the Nuggets do believe, that MPJ is going to turn into that 3rd superstar for them, but he has his own issues within itself in terms of the injuries, so you have to be sure for a full season if this guy can truly play and make it all the way through the regular season and into the playoffs with being basically injury free. If he does prove that ability though, and does prove the ability to be an all-star or maybe even better in the league, I definitely think you have a pretty decent big 3 going with Jokic, Jamal, and MPJ. And then of course if Aaron Gordon becomes that borderline all-star level, that's just gravy at that point. And potentially having 4 all-stars on your team is absolutely incredible. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think Aaron Gordon would be that all-star level talent. But we'll see what happens going forward. To me personally, the Nuggets are one of the more exciting teams going forward. With the young guys they have in their roster, I'm just very excited to see how they grow and flourish going forward. But if I had to quickly give a yes or no answer to whether I think the Nuggets will win an NBA championship within the next 5 years, I would probably have to say no on the spot right now. But with that being said, do I think they have the capability to win one going forward? 100% yeah. When you have Jokic on your team, that's a great start. It's not like the Nuggets only have Jokic. They have some other really good players as well. MPJ, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon. They have also a pretty deep roster in general. There's obviously a possibility, and more than a possibility, that this team does win an NBA championship within the next 5 years. I just think currently at this point, it's hard for me to see it and say yes at this point. That's the only reason I'm saying that. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you guys think this Denver Nuggets team can win an NBA championship within the next 5 seasons, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, please leave a like and subscribe, and hit that post notification bell. It helps me out a lot. Until the next time, peace out, guys.